Chris Hyrick.
I'm Erika M.
And I'm Katelyn.
And we're all AYA Math Ed majors. So we did our practicum at Lubrizol back in the fall. So what is Lubrizol? It's basically, it's a chemical company. They actually create the products that go into a lot of your common household soaps, shampoos, that kind of thing. They also work on the engine oil, pretty much any synthetic compound that can go into a food that you would normally buy on a store shelf can be made at Lubrizol. So you're never going to see a Lubrizol product at Kroger or Meijer, but they make a lot of the ingredients that go into this on your shampoo or your soap. So Lubrizol's mission, at Lubrizol we combine complex specialty chemicals to optimize the quality of customers' products while reducing their environmental impact. So they have a big focus on trying to be efficient, but also trying to help the environment because they know they're a chemical company. Beyond that, when we started, our supervisors were Joe Lovell and Linda Jeffrey. So we would meet with them on Fridays for a couple hours each week. So we did that from late September through early November and got through everything in about 10 weeks.
So when we went into Lubrizol, Joe and Linda basically explained to us that we should look at the recipe that they want to give us, basically like to bake a cake. And so there were 15 that were their like top offenders, and they could have a problem to deal with time, lot size, material variance, or like a mixture of all of them. So what they wanted us to do was to look at the Excel spreadsheets that Linda had already made and kind of organize them in a way so that we would be able to understand them better and then create like some recommendations of how they can improve their recipes. So most of the time that we were there, we did time and we did a little bit of lot size. So basically lot size is how much Lubrizol had planned to use versus how much they actually needed to use. And then time was how long the batches were planned to take versus how long it actually would take to mix them.
So you have to picture, we didn't want to use any pictures of their information because we weren't sure if we were actually allowed to share that. But we had a spreadsheet with over 50,000 rows of data. So they gave us all their batches from January through August of 2017. And it was literally just show us where we're going wrong. Where we're using too much of something, where we're spending too much time in the oven. It was ridiculous. There's 50,000 rows, all these batches they had done.
So from that, we created our activities, so we're going to get started on that. And like Katelyn said, they really explained to us what we were doing, like baking a cake. So we created a company called Cakes Are Us, and we have our recipe off to the left-hand side, so that's how much we want to use of sugar, flour, cake mix, eggs, and how long we want it to bake. But the rest are the past 6 orders that we have done, and as you can see, they're pretty different from our recipe. So what we want you all to do is look at all the data we've given you, see if we should modify our recipe, and if we should, what should we change it to, and why. And we really want to challenge you to not just look at sugar individually, we want you to think about the context, what might be going on in between the lines of this data, because we haven't given you everything. So another thing you might want to think about is what part of the data might be missing.
I've actually got graph paper if you guys want to scrap paper. You just want to write things down, little things. I'm going to walk around. But like, yeah, as you're going through this, it's pretty open-ended. Do you have any suggestions for how to revise the recipe? Everybody want graph paper? Graph paper, anybody? Graph paper, anybody? Yeah? Graph paper, anyone? Everybody's got stuff to write on? Perfect. So you give us your recipe, and then you have these 6 words that are actually.
So I suppose we got the recipe because they're all the same recipe.
Sorry.
The recipe is on the left. The recipe column.
How would you
And
change
then
it?
the other one is how they're actually doing it. They're not following the recipe. And they're saying that they change the recipe. You're third of an egg. 30% of an egg. I know, like you mix the whole egg up.
Did we begin at 45? Did we begin at 45? Oh, so that's how I am?
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
No sugar. We can have dietary. You know. like time to sit out with you guys, but also it doesn't taste bad. That's my question. That's what I wish I knew.
That's a good question.
That's my kind of cake. Yeah, it like shows like the amount of time it makes to bake and how many times what cake are you
What's it cost to make?
It's
Oh, yeah.
I know.
Customer pays or how much it costs to make that?
I've never been there because Hilliard.
Sugar-free cake?
No, we're really close. Give or take. Well, I live on the outskirts. Oh, okay. Anything else you do say? You're so right. That's a good one, Andy. That's a good one. That is the question. Hey, Wendy. No, I'm just like, is it picking up everything I'm saying? And the answer is yes. Well, I would assume it's all the same. Otherwise, I would get
Alright guys, so if we can start discussing, does anybody have maybe a conclusion for a specific attribute, something we should use more or less, something we should spend less time on, or maybe you have questions you want to know?
I really want to know how the cakes turned out.
How the cakes turned out?
Yeah, because if they, the recipes didn't turn out well, then I don't want to use it to.
That's fair.
Yeah, you really should have brought cakes for us to test.
You're right. I don't have an oven in my dorm, otherwise I absolutely go for the one.
Well, we don't know what elevation the cake is being cooked. You know, like
That's fair.
recipes change and
That's
like
fair.
cake elevation.
The environment is important. Is the environment stable between all the trials? I like that. That's a really good thing to consider. Okay?
How do you get 1/3 of an egg?
That is an excellent question. Josh,
How much is everything going to cost?
how much is it going to cost? You know, I think that is reasonable to consider. I mean, if we talk about how we perfect the recipe, then we focus on cost later. It's probably from a business standpoint. But yes, cost is very important.
What temperature are you putting the cakes at?
What temperature and is it consistent? That's a really good pitch.
Are you cooking one cake with every order? Are you cooking multiple? Are you cooking cupcakes?
There
Like,
you go. Yeah, how are the orders? What do the orders actually have? That's good.
Like, what are the size and shape of the pans? Because that'll, like, affect, like, what the cooking
Yes,
time is.
size and shape of the pans. That's very important. Very important. Actually, well, I'll talk about that later. Okay, does anybody have conclusions they wanted to share before we continue? So, because the more important thing we wanted you guys to talk about is if you've heard of MEAs, your model eliciting activity, sometimes it's more important for students to really consider the context of the question before they even advance on the data. We want them to really consider what factors go into play and really consider why they're working on what they're working on and if they even have enough information to work on the problem. So sometimes that's actually more important to begin with. You guys had some really great ideas. I was walking around, I heard a lot of other things that haven't been said just now, so that's great. So, things that we thought of. Are they all the same flavor? I forget who said that, but that's absolutely important. If it's a different flavor, then you're going to need a different recipe to begin with. And then if they are the same flavor, are they the same brand? So Devil's Food Chocolate Cake with Duncan Hines is different than Betty Crocker. All right, pan size consistency. So this is actually, it directly correlates to what we did with Lubrizol. So they gave us their recipes for certain chemicals that they wanted to synthesize with all these compounds that go into them. And then we gave them recommendations for, okay, here's how much longer you should be cooking each of these things. Cooking is a loose word there, but here's how much longer you should be cooking them in your tanks. And they said, after our check-in in the middle, they were like, you know, we use multiple different tanks considering the size of the batch. So we want you to subclassify by tank and then give us time recommendations for that. Different pan sizes. If you have a 9x9 as opposed to a 9x13 cake, you're going to bake it differently, right? Different times. So that was actually really relevant. Is the temperature consistent? I forget who said that, and elevation too. Very good, because absolutely it's going to change the cooking time. If it's low enough, you can't even make the chemical reaction occur to bake the cake. And then a big thing to consider is typos. We actually did have some things in our data that they gave us we could tell was a typo, so we did say the information wasn't valid and we couldn't draw a conclusion from it. And of course, how do you get 3 1/3 of an egg? It's actually a really good question.
So then these were the results that we had found. This is just part of our data because we took the Excel that Linda had made and then we made a Google Sheets. And so most of the time we were able to just kind of get results on time. We had worked on lot size a little bit, but we weren't able to finish it. So as Chris said, like we didn't show like the data that they had given us because we didn't know if we could. But what we did was there was like a column that was plan time and then there was another was actual. So we took the difference of those and then we made histograms to kind of see where all the times kind of lie and where like the tallest like bar was at was where we kind of figured out this is overall where they should like decrease their time or add to their time and kind of create something like that. And then there was somewhere there were like different sizes, so like SFI 1036, there were batches that was like 80,000, 105,000, and 130,000, 175,000. So like we had to break it down into that, and then there were ones that had different tanks to it, so obviously the tanks will make them different as well, so we had to include that. And then there were some where there just was not enough trials for us to actually come to a conclusion, so that's why we have insufficient data.
There were also quite a few times where the data was way too spread out in order to draw conclusions. So when we graphed it, it was pretty uniform. There would have been thousands of outliers to the point where there wouldn't even have been made sense to come up with any conclusions. So that's another reason why we have some insufficient data in there as well.
Yeah, we'd have some times where it was like normally the loads would take 20 hours too long, and then we'd have one where the load was 17 hours short. And we're like, well, why did that happen? And they would tell us later, oh, that's because that was a touch-up load. They actually just did a batch to finish heating something up. That was it. So they have these odd outlier situations that you can't consider.
And then so what did we learn? So the main thing that I learned was patience. You could ask Chris and Erika. I had technology issues pretty much every week that we were at Resolve. They gave us laptops, and mine just would not work for me, and so they would give me another one, and it still wouldn't work, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong with it. So just kind of waiting on that was kind of an inconvenience, so working around that. And then communication skills. We actually had to discuss with Joe and Linda a lot about what our ideas were and what we were coming up with, and if we were, if we were on the right track, if this is what they truly wanted. And also just communicating with Chris and Erika, because we all have different ideas, we all, we think differently, so coming up with an overall consensus that would work for our project. And then Google Sheets. I had not really used Google Sheets prior to this. I used it for like a week when we did the technology class. That was like the only time that I used it. So using it for this long a time, and then just professionalism in general. We were in a business setting, we had to be professional, and then just data analysis as well.
So I would definitely just repeat a lot of things she said. The most important thing I think we learned was adaptability. So when we did our midpoint check-in, it was actually 2 weeks late because they were busy. So we had 3 weeks left, and they told us, hey, we actually asked you to use the wrong data. So can you redo pretty much everything you did really quick? So that was like we had to be flexible and we had to adapt, but we got through everything and we still gave them some final numbers. And just like seeing that compounding snowball effect of if we fix your recipe once, but then you do 1,000 batches a year, how much money that actually saves them was kind of cool, real world context.
And then I also learned a lot about Google Sheets. I had done just the regular standard plugging things and doing functions, but just taking it to the whole new level when you have 50,000 rows of data, which actually Google Sheets can't do because it has a minimum, so Excel's better for that. But also, since Google Classroom is becoming a lot more prevalent in schools, I think really getting a good understanding and how to use the different components that can go into Google Classroom, like Google Sheets, will really help me in the future. And then also just data analysis in the real world. So obviously I knew what mean and median and outliers and all that were, but really seeing that in the context of the real world, how to know when to use mean, when to use median based on those different outliers that exist in the real world, and also why those outliers are happening. And then also just a little bit about histograms and how you can really manipulate them to